when the books came out, people were writing books. Books were being banned. TV channels, even now in Egypt, many other places, channels, Al Jazeera, for instance, will be banned. Is the West concerned that something that they have invented themselves is becoming a reason for exposing them?
So yes, this technology is a problem. That's what makes this technology very unique. Anybody can report anything. I don't need to go to the BBC, to CNN, to New York Times. I can speak to an individual who's on the ground. He's at the hospital that Israel's bombed, and they can report what's going on. And that's why you find accounts get closed down without any explanation. If you look at all the main social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, WhatsApp, all of these are American-owned companies.
Chomsky, he talked about manufacturing and consent. How dangerous can this get, Sheikh? Can you make populations do things that are... You see where I'm going with this? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Dear brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh, and welcome to Islamic Oasis Live. Dear brothers and sisters, we are... there is, of course, we are all well aware of the effects of social media, good, bad, and ugly. But social media has also played a very, one may say, a strategic role in what is happening, the events of the world. We look at the Arab Spring, we look at the effects of what's happening in Gaza, the daily updates that are coming out on a literally daily basis from inside Gaza. What was happening between India and Pakistan situation, although in Kashmir it is completely no journalist is allowed inside, and even to the point that social media has been cut off inside from Kashmir. Afghanistan is a whole different ballgame. Now, the point is that social media has played a very strategic role. And so to discuss this, the effects of it, whether it's election time, whether it's political events taking place, public opinion, even revolutions. We're going to, inshallah, discuss this, take a deep dive type of thing, inshallah, with our brother Adnan, who has been here many a times, who runs many different platforms talking about geopolitics throughout the world, especially when it comes to Islam and Muslims. So, Brother Adnan, welcome back to Islamic Oasis Live, Sheikh.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're all well and good to be here again.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So let's begin this, Brother Adnan. I was reading this book by Brzezinski, although at that time, when he was writing this, I don't think social media was to where it is today. But he was talking about the role of media, the amount of information that the people are able to get is affecting even Western interests to the point of maybe it's causing disruptions in the interest of what West wants to do, whether it's in this country or in general in the Muslim lands. We went through, for instance, I'm sure you remember the days of Iran-Iraq war, where the only thing that we knew was what CNN was telling us. Literally what's happening inside Iraq was, day by day, even though it was day by day. I remember day 1, day 2, day 3, 10 days to Baghdad, all this craziness that was going on. But it was all CNN. But now today, you can have access to maybe 100 different channels and maybe 100 different outlets in general. So let's talk about this, Sheikh. What has been the effect of social media when you look at the events happening in the world in general?
So look, mass communication or mass media as a tool, as a technology, what you find throughout history, there's been different forms. So, you had newspapers, you had messengers, you had satellite TV. What you find with all of these is there's a big barrier to entry. You need a lot of money. You have to set up a whole infrastructure, organization, you need equipment. So what you find is for your average person, having a technology where you can communicate a message, it was out of the range for most people. And that's why you find very rich individuals, rich corporations, politicians who needed funding, they were able to influence the few organizations that used to mass produce information for people. So when I was growing up in the 80s, what you find it was the news that used to come on in the evening. You had the mainstream newspapers. So the first Iraq war, like you mentioned, 1991, you get a very filtered version of what was going on. Right? Vietnam was actually the first time the Vietnamese War was when journalists were embedded with troops and you were getting information. Now, what the internet did is it did something quite unique. The internet is decentralized. Mass communication usually is very centralized. You've got a few organizations and they dominate the market. What the internet was is you've got loads of servers and everyone can connect to a server. So it's very decentralized. So people, that's me and you could sit down and have this conversation today, even though we've never met in person, and you're on one side of the Atlantic, I'm on the other side of the Atlantic. And how much is the cost to do this? Well, it's however much the platform costs us, which isn't a lot. And YouTube, which emerged in early 2000s, well, Facebook came first, then you had YouTube, then you had Twitter, completely revolutionized how people communicate with each other, how people share information. One of the reasons TikTok has effectively been banned in America is because the pro-Zionists are not happy that you are getting the real events taking place in Gaza. Because you've got individuals who are there, you've got Israeli troops who are filming what they're doing. And it's getting online and people seeing what's going on. Do you remember when that Zionist said to the sister in Sheikh Jarrah, if I don't steal your home, somebody else will?
Yeah.
If there was
And he
no
said, "Oh, I
social
feel bad for
media,
you." Yeah.
if there was no social media, we would never know about that. So this is why this Gaza genocide, the Holocaust, we found out about that after the World War II finished. It wasn't televised live. This genocide daily is being broadcast. And that's why people who are not Jews, people who are not Muslims, are seeing this and they can't believe it. And Israel and the pro-Zionists, they are struggling in their information war. And I think that's probably a good point to finish this point on that. You control information, you control people's perceptions, people's views, so you can shape them. And what internet does is decentralized. Anybody can post anything. You could be a journalist, you're in Gaza, and you can actually tell the whole world what is going on. And when I was growing up in the 1990s, I actually did a paper on the emerging internet. And what we said at the time is everybody would have access to information, so we would be more wiser. Everybody can make good decisions now. They've got the same information. What we didn't know at that time was the amount of noise that's going to be out there, the amount of fake news that's going to be out there. We didn't anticipate that at the time. So that's what makes this technology very unique. Anybody can report anything. I don't need to go to the BBC, to CNN, to New York Times. I can speak to an individual who's on the battlefield. He's on the ground. He's at the hospital that Israel's bombed, and they can report what's going on. Whilst before, you'd have to wait for the Israeli official to give a press conference where he doesn't really answer a question, where he blames Hamas, where there's no way to even question and check his credibility or check the facts he's making. Now you can actually check things. That's why you have this concept of fact checks. That's why you have this concept of fake news. So now you can't say one thing one day and say something else, but I can check you. And in fact, I've got the recording of what you said last week. And that's the era we live in. And that's why what's going on in Gaza is a very good case study of how to lose the information war. People are seeing what's going on, and they just don't believe what comes from Israeli officials. They don't believe what comes from American officials. What they're saying is what I see is not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing from you, I'm seeing the complete opposite on the ground. And that's the world we live in today.
Sheikh, but it's also, it's interesting that, okay, look, how should we look at this growth of technology is the West it's a weird dichotomy. I guess they want modernization. And of course you're looking at now, I think I was looking at things that I think China has now 10, what do they call that? when it comes to the speed of internet, right? I mean, nations are competing on what, the type of technology, the speed of internet, the speed of all of these things. But Sheikh, so do you think that they're looking at this thing and saying that, look, what is the limit of, what should they limit technology? I mean, so when we look at books, when the books came out, people were writing books were being banned. Authors would be banned. I'm sure, TV channels. For instance, even now in Egypt, many other places, channels, Al Jazeera, for instance, would be banned. But is the West concerned that something that they have invented themselves is becoming a reason for exposing them?
But look, this is not unique to the internet. You find every technology that every empire created, they created with one purpose, but it had unintended consequences. So you look at the combustion engine that was invented by the Germans. That's what they got into tanks. That's what they got into fighter jets, when originally it was just for transport. You go throughout history, all technologies, but you just don't know the effect it's going to have. Who would have known in the early 90s the impact the internet will have? Google, Amazon are purely the creation of the internet. Take the internet away, these two won't exist. AI now is probably going to lead to the destruction of loads of industries and the creation of a completely new one that we probably haven't even thought of. But what's interesting is you're right, absolutely. Many in the West can see a problem. What they're finding is people are becoming more aware. What they're finding is things which were considered conspiracies are actually now evidence-based facts and alternative views. So you find, for example, why are people like Mahmoud Khalil in America being silenced? In the UK, we've just had a former footballer, Gary Lineker. He's had to leave his post because he was pro-Gaza. So what you're finding is they are using draconian measures to stop freedom of speech. Because remember, the West have invaded countries to give them freedom. And in their own countries, well, we're not sure about this. So if you are pro-Palestinian or pro-Gaza in America, you're accused of being anti-Semitic. You're accused of being xenophobic. Your accusations are thrown at you. So this is not something they anticipated. So Israel, until now, has probably done a very good job of promoting its views about Israel. But in the last 18 months, they've completely destroyed 70 years worth of work. And I don't think it's because the people have done anything. People can just see what you're saying is the complete opposite to what I'm seeing you doing. So yes, this technology is a problem. And that's why you find accounts get closed down on YouTube without any explanation. People get kicked off other social media platforms. And that's why TikTok's doing really well, because TikTok is a platform not from an American company. If you look at all the main social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, you look at WhatsApp, all of these things, all of these are American-owned companies. And Zionists have a lot of influence there. But if you start looking at TikTok, if you start looking at Telegram, bit of a different story.
Sheikh, I mean, for instance, what's happening in Kashmir, they have been able to control what's happening in Kashmir. We don't still today. I mean, unless I'm really digging in deep somewhere, trying to look for what's happening in Kashmir. Why do you think that is, Sheikh? Is that the level of information that's coming out of Kashmir versus the level of information that's coming out of Gaza? I mean, can somebody? Is it just because the level of destruction in Gaza? Is it the people are just more connected to what's happening in Gaza? Is there some type of a bias there also? I guess what I'm connecting to is that technology can also create a type of, it can create its own realities.
It can, and we've seen that in many cases. We've seen fake news. We've seen public opinion created. In the UK, Brexit was based on lies, completely based on lies, blaming the EU for everything when these are problems created domestically. So that is also possible, but that's the case with any technology. All technologies they can be used for good and bad. A car can be used for good and bad. AI can be used for good
No,
and
no,
bad.
I agree with that, but I'm saying, why do we not see that kind of maybe that type of awareness coming out, or usage of technology coming out of Kashmir, for instance?
Okay, so there's a couple of things here. Firstly, I think with the issue of Palestine, because the Europeans created this illegitimate country, they have for a long time given it very favorable coverage. The Jews, they were victims of the Holocaust. They've gone to Palestine now. They're trying to make a life for themselves. There's some problem there, but we have to help them. We have to get the public behind them, right? Kashmir was the mess of the departing British, but it's not viewed the same way because you got India, you got Pakistan, they're fighting over it. With Palestine, Israel is their illegitimate child, so they have to defend it, right? And then also in Europe, you have a very big lefty movement. And the left generally are anti-imperial and they support Palestine. So football clubs, many lefty political parties in the UK, in Germany, in France are pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. So a lot more people in Europe, for example, are much more aware of the Palestinian issue compared to Kashmir. I think the other also thing is that, Palestinian groups and Muslims generally in the West, they're organized a lot more better when it comes to Palestine. If you look at Kashmir, the organization of the information war is very poor. On the India side, it's very poor. They just completely lie. And then on the Muslim, even on the Pakistan side, there's not a very organized, structured information war when it comes to Kashmir. And, for a long time, the Kashmir dispute seems to have been an internal dispute between India and Pakistan. So now they've had a war, the whole world's interested. But what you find is generally viewed as an internal problem, whilst Palestine, you got many countries, and there's a view in the West that the West has to be involved to make sure this can get resolved. In Kashmir, they don't view it like that at all. And also, I think just Palestine more important. It's the Middle East. If Israel's wiped off the map, that has an effect. If Palestine's wiped off the map, that has an effect on the people. You got oil there. It's a cross-section of the world. It's a strategic location. The South Asia is important, but for different reasons. Yeah, not for oil, not for strategic location. So I think in that sense, I mean, to be honest with you, from our perspective, we should give them both importance. They're occupied lands and they need to be liberated. There shouldn't really be a difference. Obviously, culturally, Palestine is blessed land. So any occupation of a blessed land would be viewed a bit differently. But, from a Muslim standpoint, occupied land and occupied land, we should work to reverse it. But from a world perspective, Palestine is the Holy Land, centuries of history, it's under occupation, there's a war going on. So people view it like from that perspective and it gets more media attention.
Sheikh, I mean, social media played a huge role in the Arab Spring. I might remember, we were watching day by day what was happening in Egypt, for instance, in Tahrir Square, Maidan Tahrir there, and then also what was happening in Syria. Of course, this is still an ongoing situation. I don't think revolts completely have ended in either places. One, we may say that there's a lot of things that are still boiling within the Muslim lands. Obviously the issue of Gaza itself, poverty, 60% of the population of Egypt under poverty or under poverty. Sheikh, but then Egypt was able to completely control what's happening on social media. We can control literally minds of people through this. And on the top of that, the usage of AI. How dangerous can this get, Sheikh? Can you make populations do things that are you see where I'm going with this? Is that really you can create realities that...
Look, the European imperialists, when they colonized the world, if you look at the UK, Belgium, Holland, these are small populations. How are they going to control and run so many colonies? So they realize you can't just always use brute force. You can't just send your army. When your army's in the Caribbean, it's not in Indonesia. So what they realize is you need to have tools of manipulation. So, the white man is superior. The white man's come to liberate you. The white man is more civilized. You're barbarians. You need to become like us. You need to wear a suit. The more you become like us, they use these sort of things to manipulate people. And that was when there was very little technology apart from newspapers. So what you find is now they've perfected the technology. So what you find is in Egypt, they don't have a problem when they shut down the internet if it means to defend the regime. In America, they wouldn't do that because they feel they want to use the technology to manipulate people. And sometimes they may not work, but they feel the tool is very useful to control and build the minds of people. In our countries, the rulers, they just use brute force. So you're right, in the internet, during the Arab Spring, I think for a couple of days, they shut down the internet, or they shut down a lot of the internet, yeah? Because at the end of the day, look, if you look at most countries, you've got lots of servers, but what you find, the traffic runs through some key, what they're called, key lines. And in the Arab, so for example, you've had cases in the sea. Someone's doing some work, they've put their sail down in the ocean, and they've damaged a cable. So the internet's gone off in half of the Middle East. So as good as this technology is, as powerful as it is, it can actually be cut pretty quickly as well. So, this is the nature of technology, that a stealth fighter jet is brilliant, you can't see it. But when it rains, the stealth doesn't work. Such a simple, natural thing, the technology falls apart. This is the nature of technology. It's brilliant, but it has vulnerabilities because it's just materials, it's different objects that you bring together that people can use. So you find in the Middle East, for example, they try to control the uprising. Mubarak still got overthrown. The Muslim Brotherhood came in. Sisi took over. Sisi is struggling now. See, even if Sisi shuts down the internet, people can see Sisi is useless. He doesn't know how to run the economy, and he's run the country into the ground. Like, no amount of manipulation or propaganda can change that reality. People can see it, they're living it. So these technologies are great, but at the end of the day, it can't stop the tsunami. If people hate you, if people see you're useless and you're not working for them, it doesn't matter what you do with the internet. And then the internet can be a very useful tool then to mobilize people and things like that.
Sheikh, let's talk about, for instance, now even in China and TikTok. Why do you think? I mean, when we look at the effect of, is TikTok a Chinese foreign policy tool?
So TikTok is so dangerous as far as America is concerned, they passed a law against it. So this is the first mass social media company, global mass company, that's not American owned. If you look until now, you had Facebook, which is owned by Meta. You had YouTube, you had Twitter. These are all American companies. So one of the reasons the Europeans passed laws about data is because this was the only way to try and control and restrict these American companies in Europe. So there's laws now in Europe about how much data you can keep, how you have to anonymize it, how you can't identify people. This was their way of dealing with it. So China's now created a company, created an app, and Americans love it. And this is worrying for America because Americans are now getting opinions and views which are the alternatives to what they're usually getting. So what's actually interesting is at the Munich summit a few months ago, one of the Democratic senator there, I can't remember his name, he admitted when we originally tried to ban TikTok, there was very little support and we couldn't do much. Then October 7 happened, and the Zionists started saying because there's too much coverage of the real story on the ground, many senators supported the bill to ban TikTok. So although they're saying we banned it because of China, in reality, it was the Zionists and Israel who pushed it and it got banned. So that shows you the impact you can have if you've got an app and people can share information that is not owned by America or the West.
So, but Sheikh, it's interesting that, this is, again, even the media, when it comes to these type of huge media networks, social media apps, it has stayed between US and China. I mean, we don't see anybody else inventing such technologies.
So you do have apps, but no one's been able to scale it up to a global level.
I don't see it maybe Russians, they do. I think they use Telegram or something like this.
Like in every country, to develop an app isn't very difficult. You can develop an app. If you look at Telegram, when it was first developed, it was just some app in Eastern Europe, really, yeah. But scaling it up, going into countries, because what happens is when you have a server in America, there's rules you have to abide by. When you have a server in Europe, there's rules you have to abide by. So now scaling it up, scaling a product is a corporate challenge. It's not a technological challenge. It can be a financial challenge. This is a business issue. Anybody can make an app and scale up. You could have an Arab app. You could have an app for the Arab world. But MBZ and MBS, they won't like it unless they control it. That's the difference. In our country, the rulers are happy as long as people don't share information about the rulers or gather to criticize the ruler. So what you find is in our countries, unless the regime or someone linked to the regime invents it, they're not going to be happy. So we've seen, Jamal Khashoggi, he was in the West, he was gathering dissidents, and look at what they did to him. This is a message to anyone. You can talk on social media, talk about the regime, criticize the regime, we're going to come for you. So it's all old school. If we don't like what you say, we're going to come after you. So you can develop an app, and China's shown you can do that. Okay, China had the advantage. You've got 1 billion plus people. So you can build an app nationally. Once you've established it at a really high level, now you can go abroad because, you've got the expertise. But, all of this can be done. It's scaling up. And the problem is, social media, you effectively end up going into geopolitics. You just want to have a social forum people can talk. But the problem with social forums is what? People want to talk about politics. So this is where it becomes geopolitical and governments get interested and foreign powers get interested. And this was the argument against TikTok, that we don't control it, the Chinese do. And the Chinese seem to be influencing Americans. And Chinese have admitted all the anti-Israel views, it's not the algorithm, that's just what people believe. So even Vox in America, they did research on TikTok users. And they actually said that TikTok users being anti-Israel is the same rate as normal American society, meaning this is public opinion. What the narrative in America is, the China's manipulating it. That's why TikTok's anti-Israel and anti-America.
Sheikh, so now, first of all, when we think about these, let's say the IDF inside Gaza. Sheikh, these guys are actually putting together and they're filming what's happening. They're not worried about this, that this is getting online. People are actually seeing what you're doing to women and children in hospitals and things like this. I'm trying to figure out, and then they're worried about TikTok and they're worried about YouTube or Facebook, whatever is happening on these apps. But why, Sheikh? Why this level of where they're... it's like they're exposing their crimes.
So this is their level of arrogance. This is their level of we are superior and everyone's inferior and we don't care. So if, for example, Trump didn't meet any Israelis, he didn't go to Israel when he went to the Middle East now. In fact, he criticized Israel. But despite all of that, the arms are still going from America to Israel.
He came in next day, he put it, yeah.
So if you're Israeli, America's still backing you. Why do you need to care about public opinion? As long as America's backing you, why do you need to care? And remember, the Zionism is racist. You are superior, everyone's inferior. We're Zionists, we have a right to this land. You need to leave. If you don't leave, we will push you out, which is what they're doing. Smotrich, I think the defense secretary or the internal security, he's admitted today that the reason why we've given a little bit of food, we've allowed a little, remember they've had a siege on Gaza. When the ceasefire finished in January, they blocked electricity, water, gas, and any aid. And now they're invading. And he said the reason why we let a little bit of food in now, we don't want to lose the support of the West. Meaning he's admitted we're ethnically cleansing. Now, why does he feel confident he can even say that? So that's why, if this is your politicians, your soldiers who are implementing what the politicians are saying, you've got no right. I've seen the Al Jazeera documentary. They're going through the drawers, private clothes, private items of people in Gaza.
What I'm saying. It's beyond belief.
No, these people have got, remember, We only found out about the Holocaust once World War II finished. It wasn't beamed live. This Holocaust 2.0 is being beamed live. People are seeing it play out live. And, you know, the Israeli position seems to be, if you hate us, we're going to put our foot down even more. That's their strategy. What they don't see is you're losing the moral ground. Think about this. The Zionists in Israel, many of these are, if not directly or indirectly, victims of the Holocaust. How can the victims of Holocaust be committing a Holocaust today? How can the victims of a Holocaust be accused of committing a Holocaust today? This is the reality we live in today. They are the illegitimate child of the West. The West keep providing them with a leg up. They keep providing them with arms. So what you've got here is an out of control child. You've got a spoilt child who acts like a spoilt child.
Sheikh, you know, Chomsky, he talked about manufacturing and consent. You remember the whole book that he puts together, and he's talking about how media can create consent at the end of the day. I mean, even though, let's say, I mean, the public opinion is against, obviously, you know, we can see it's against what Israel is doing, but there's no effect on policymakers on what should be happening inside. So why do you think that is, Sheikh? I mean, it's even people seeing what's happening, it doesn't matter. And if that doesn't matter, what matters? I mean, at the end of the day, it's I guess what gives the West still the strength to continue doing what they're doing, Sheikh, even though I think humanity is standing up and saying this is unbelievable what's happening in front of our eyes.
Look, opinion is changing, is having an effect on politicians, yeah? Not the effect we want it to be, which is they stop it completely. So what you've got is the way things have worked in the West for a long time is Israel has the right to exist, and Israel has the right to security, and the Palestinians should just accept that. And they've supported Israel by constantly looking the other way when it commits crimes. And then when anybody accuses Israel of anything, they say you're anti-Semitic. So Western politicians assume they could do the same now. And what they're not realizing is your people see the relationship with Israel as a problem. So even polls coming out of America show the youth and the young, they have a very different view towards Israel. So what's going to happen in the next generation, if you want to become a politician and get to high office, more and more people in America will not have an affinity with Israel. I mean, unless you're of a certain age, you might have a view towards Israel. Young people, as far as they're concerned, Israel is another nation. All the MAGA supporters of Trump, they have a very different view towards Israel. Their view is we need to put America first. We can't put Israel first. But obviously, the Republican support base, the evangelical Christian, they've always been pro-Israel. So it is changing, and it's changing slowly. But I think America's got another problem. Its relationship with Israel is a problem. America's position in the world is a problem. China has come out of a war with Pakistan looking much stronger, much confident. So a lot of things are going wrong for the West and America.
Sheikh, I mean, do you consider what the visit of Trump in the Middle East? I mean, I didn't see any comments, I mean, from the Chinese perspectives, but is Trump trying to reverse the role or what the status of U.S. is in politics today? As far as, I mean, some still find a power to reckon with, but Chinese are inching towards taking that role. But Middle East is such an important region, Sheikh, and China does not have that type of influence. Do you think this was to show China the kind of influence that the U.S. has on the ground? What was the whole purpose? I mean, other than find money, trillions of dollars pouring into the U.S. I mean, the Arabs were doing that in general anyways. This was now publicly done.
Mm-hmm. So this visit was exactly what we saw, is the mafia bosses turned up and said, you need to pay your taxes, you need to pay your pocket money, you need to pay your racket money if you want protection. right? Because remember, Saudi, Qatar, UAE, who are they most scared of? They're scared of each other because
Right.
they've got a
Yeah,
long
of course,
history.
the huge
So
bases on the ground.
what Trump did is, I need investment. So he didn't go to Japan, he didn't go to Germany, he didn't go to Europe. They got no money. He went to
They,
the region
they,
where they've got more money than they know what to do with it, right?
mm,
So for China, although I don't think this was aimed at China, it does send a message, which is this is our backyard. Yeah. So remember, China has a relationship with Saudi. China has a relationship with Iran. But that relationship is nowhere close to the relationship America has. When the American mafia boss turned up, they rolled out the red carpet and they wrote checks to him. Yeah, that's something China is not even remotely close to even achieving.
and they even offered their woman, for God's sakes. I mean, the way it
Yeah,
looks like.
well, you saw it. Yeah, they offered it. These guys, if this is. I mean, even Trump said, if it wasn't for us, you guys wouldn't exist for 2 minutes. Yeah, he's very open. So, China is trying. Don't get me wrong. China's trying to win Iran. Yeah, but
Mm.
the Iranians, the clerics know the America's the power. However, if America's a decline in power, maybe they need to hedge their bets. Who do you need to be with? So you've got this guy. But again, remember, America's got to be everywhere. America has to be in South Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, in the Far East. China doesn't have to be everywhere. China's not hegemonic. So, if America has to, we saw when America had to fight 2 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, it overstretched it. So, yeah, China's not there yet. It's rising as a look. If you're the superpower, you will always be looking where's your competition, and China's the competition. But China is a future potential competitor. At the moment, there's a long way to go. However, if you're America or if you're the superpower, you're looking at where your competition is, where your threats are, and they believe we need to deal with it now because China has rapidly developed in 2 decades. Look at its military now, look at its technology, look at its society. The only bit, the jigsaw piece that's missing is China taking a political role. So Trump said, the global liberal order, I'm ripping it up. Doesn't serve America anymore. China should introduce a new global order. And Africa and Europe will probably join because America's ripped it up. But can you see the Chinese don't think like that yet?
Sheikh, they don't think like that yet. Why? I mean, it's an ideological state.
So look, the Chinese, they're a bit different to the West, yeah? The Chinese have a culture, their culture, but they don't believe their culture is universal. They believe their culture is unique to the Chinese people. So there's no propagating their values. So not like the West, they did imperialism. They conquered other countries. We're going to democratize you. You need freedom. The Chinese don't believe their culture is for other people. They believe their culture is unique to them. So that's all trade. It's not good if there's one power because he becomes hegemonic. So there should be multiple powers. That's as far as China's views goes. And then the other views China has is, America and the West, they've been bad for the world. So the world should come together and try and come up with something different where we can all trade and live together. So China doesn't have anything ideological for the world. It's not saying, here's new values, you subscribe to, you adopt it. So during the Cold War, the Soviet Union was calling people to communism. America was calling everybody to capitalism. Trump isn't calling anyone to capitalism. He's saying, you got your national interests, we've got our own national interests. To China or Russia, they're not offering anything for the world. What they are offering is America's bad, the dollar's bad, America's military bases are bad, America's economic situation is bad, America's trade around the world is bad, and look, trade with China and we'll be better. That's as far as their vision for the world goes. At the moment. I mean, that can change, yeah. You could also remember, look, the last 150 years, 100 of those, China was colonized. After World War II, China was able to free itself.
Yeah, I was wondering if that's because of time difference.
Yeah, so it's been working on developing itself. But remember, China's view of history is very simple. For centuries, we were this great power. We had so much wealth and agriculture, we didn't need to engage with the world. Then the Europeans turned up in 1839 and China realized, oh, with their technology, we've fallen behind. So from 1840 to 1940, China went through the century of humiliation, where the French, the Germans, the British, the Belgians, the Dutch, the American, the Russians all took pieces of China. Hong Kong was only given back to China in 1997. For 150 years, the British colonized it. So that's why they call it the century of humiliation. So, so China's view is after 100 years of anomaly, we're now getting back to where we were. So for most of human history, India was a power. India had wealth, it was a power, and then the Europeans turned up.
Sheikh, okay, so let's another side to social media here. Well, there are a few I want to discuss with you, but one, the brain drain that social media causes. Let's say, what I mean, can you use social media to basically use the minds of influential people within other countries to basically work for you? I mean, this is something that we are seeing, right? Everywhere, and people are so impressed by, I don't know, Western technology, Western companies, all these things. But has that caused brain drain, where people are? I mean, you're losing your way or your wealth that can build your own nation, but the West has been able to take them on their side.
Yeah. Look, the West were doing this even before the internet, because the economies of the Muslim world don't work, because the rulers are corrupt.
So is economy connected to social media?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, look, the internet is a tool. People trade on there. People share ideas. So if you're sitting in one part of the world and all you see, there's business opportunities in the West. There's a better lifestyle in the West. You get to vote in the West. Your property isn't stolen from you. The image you got is, we need to become more Western, or I need to go to the West. So there's a lot of talent in the Muslim world. There's a lot of expertise. There's a lot of people who want to do things, but the system's corrupt. The rulers don't develop the country. The rulers are not even interested. As long as they are taking the wealth of the country. Mohammed Bouazizi, who self-immolated himself, that kickstarted the Arab Spring in Tunisia. This guy was a graduate, but there was no work. And when he wanted to sell fruit on a stall, they said, you don't have a market license. And he just lost it. He burnt himself, and that kickstarted the Arab Spring. So what you find is that even before the internet, this was a problem. The internet now, people get direct information what's going on in the West. And they see things and think, I need to go there. I can have a better life there. I can get a better education there. So social media is important. And what's interesting is it goes both ways. Many Americans are talking to Chinese, and they think it's better to be in China. Many Americans are talking to people in Mexico and believe Mexico's better. So it goes both ways. I mean, many people, for example, before Dubai, many Europeans go to Dubai, and they like the fact that you can leave your car, it won't get stolen. They like the fact that things don't get, there's no theft compared to the West. So it goes both ways, though. There's good and bad, really, in this. But definitely your average guy in Pakistan, for example, he has a mobile phone, and he can see what life is like in the West. Whilst before, he'd only hear from people. He'd hear from people who came back. So, it does have an effect. And look, it's not an accident that the internet was invented in America. The biggest companies are in America when it comes to internet and related stuff. There's a vision. So already American companies are looking at AI, what we can do with it, because that culture exists there. How can we scale up a technology? How can we use the technology to broaden America's appeal? So America's attempt to stop semiconductors getting to China has failed. America's attempt to restrict China's access to critical technology parts, because now they're trying to stop China. So now, because remember, you can build your technology, but the whole world uses it. And now China seems to be doing things better at the technology compared to America. So these are the challenges they face.
In Pakistan, for instance, in the latest situation that happened, Pakistan, between India-Pakistan situation like this, one of the things that has been said is that Pakistan, it waited 4 or 5 days, whatever, before let's say the response to India. But what was, in your view, I mean, I'm sure you were watching what was happening. I mean, the effect of social media in pushing the Pakistani government to react to what India was doing. I mean, like, for instance, Kargil happened. I don't think Pakistan, the people inside Pakistan were aware of all the technicalities that was happening when Kargil happened, or when some of these other huge events. I mean, but when it came to this issue, Pakistan, I mean, was it social media, or was it people were actually seeing missiles being dropped in Pakistan? I don't know which one was it that actually pushed the people to say they better react to this, or it could cause upheaval inside Pakistan.
See, what it is in Pakistan is when you're born at a young age, India is the enemy.
Yeah.
And, we divorced in 1947 and we hate each
So
other.
there's already a public opinion.
Yeah, it's already there. So when India attacks, look, you're going to have to do something. So obviously when India did the first attack, Pakistan's response was quite defensive, although very successful. Then they took 4 days to do a counteroffensive. And during those 4 days, people were just like, no charity, no dua, get on with it.
Nothing. We never heard of charity for Pakistan or something.
This is it.
It's just that you have to attack.
Can you see the difference between Gaza and here? Here, it was accepted military problem, military solution, right? There was no one going around collecting charity. We have to deal with this, yeah? So what happened was the army had to send their media guys on the channels to say, yeah, we got this at a time of our choosing, we're going to do something. And people were just like, no, India's attack. But remember, you've been telling people for 75 years, India's the enemy. Now the enemy's attacking. Right? So what it looks like Pakistan was doing is, they were trying to de-escalate or trying to make sure they stay within the international framework, right? And the people were seizing.
See, that's what I'm saying, Sheikh. That's exactly what I'm saying here. Look, the role of social media now, because there are certain things I was watching. This guy like Faisal Waraich, some of these guys are they're constantly on social media. They're constantly making things up. I mean, they're talking about historical events, and this is what's happening, advising the government. People are listening to them. You have 3-4 million people, watching their channels. But then there was that they were creating this opinion that India is a friend. We need to deal with India like a friend. And so, what you're saying is that, look, anyone that was, that lived in Pakistan, was born in Pakistan, they had this thing ingrained in them that India is enemy. But now, social media can be used to say that India is a friend? I mean, is this how they're going to? You see what I'm saying? How you can change massive amounts of people. You
can. The challenge you've got is the. Look, there is an opinion amongst the elite, really, not amongst the masses, that India is this growing economy. We need to have good relations with it. Right. And that's why you find when it comes to cricket and films, there's a lot more exchange between India and Pakistan, right? So there was this push that this is the best way to go forward. Now, again, that still pushes up against the last 75 years. The other thing that's made this opinion easier is, look, the Modi government is very open what they think about Muslims, what they think about Pakistan. So you can't be saying you want to be friends with this country when what they do is kill Muslims. They butcher Muslims. So there is an opinion, but the problem is this opinion that we should be friends with India is amongst some educated class. And they get more coverage because they speak English and can go on TV. So the assumption looks as though there's quite a big opinion. Vast majority of people in Pakistan who can read and write or can't read and write, India is the enemy. And that's why you find the public opinion response was one, which is we need to respond to India's attack that they did.
Sheikh, what is the relationship between India, not India, sorry, media and English language? I mean, this would be an interesting discussion by itself, but I mean, if, so there's a huge effect of Urdu, obviously. I mean, when you look at Islamic culture or Islamic literature, a lot more people are Urdu speaking online. They are listening to, there's a huge amount of Urdu literature, Urdu, channels and stuff that's out there. But media being originally English, has that created a certain sense of certain perceptions, certain perspectives because media being originally English?
So look, if you look at Chinese media, it's all in their language. There's 1 billion Chinese.
Who's watching Chinese media, Sheikh? I mean, you're sitting.
No, but,
think about it, seriously.
no, but what I mean is that
unless you're in elite class, let's say foreign policy making types, you're sitting and maybe you're watching China. But I think most of the, Pakistan, people in Pakistan are watching China or they're watching US.
So because the internet came from the West and because America was the one that led in this area, naturally, most of the online stuff and the apps and all the services are in English. But it doesn't have to be like that. So China has 1 billion people, all these apps are in Chinese. If you get the trifold phone that Huawei's done, that isn't officially sold anywhere, the software is all in Chinese. There's not a Western version for it yet. So it doesn't have to be that. The Arab board can have it all in Arabic.
Okay, let me ask you, when was the last time you were on a Chinese channel?
So, okay, I don't watch Chinese TV, but I do check what Chinese media are saying about the world. But what I mean is the reason why it's in English is because the technology was invented by people who speak English. It was America. If this was a technology invented by China, then it'd all be in Chinese and we'd be learning Chinese today.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's exactly what I'm pointing out, trying to understand is that has this also have an effect on how we think about things today, the English language? Because such a huge information communication is in English.
It can have, but look, when I go on YouTube, I can watch a video in any language. So that can have an effect on me. But just because one's in English doesn't mean it's any more influential than another one. But you're right, because most of the content's in English, then if you know the language, then now you get access to more things. You get access to other understandings, you get access to other literature. But what you find is, in other countries where they've got their own language, they would focus more on that. I remember, look, when the British came to India, all the administration was done in English. So if you didn't have education in English, if you didn't understand English, you couldn't get a job, you couldn't be in the civil service. But look, it's not a surprise, that Nehru, Gandhi, Muhammad Ali Jinnah all came to the UK, studied in the same place, learned the language. Right? These were the ones that became leaders of both of the countries. So it does have a role, absolutely. Right? And in fact, one of the reasons why Muhammad Iqbal and all the pioneers of Pakistan, they picked Jinnah to be the leader to talk to and debate and negotiate with Britain, because they felt his lawyer background and his understanding of the language would put him in a stronger position. But remember, Muhammad Iqbal was the thinker behind the whole project. Jinnah wasn't the thinker. Muhammad Iqbal was more Islamic, more deeper thinking, but even he realized you're going to have to talk to and negotiate with the British. And Jinnah's a lawyer. He spent time in the West, and they were the one that told him when he gave up in the 1930s, he gave up. The Congress Party was dominated by Gandhi. He'd given up. He'd come to the UK. And they were the one that convinced him you need to go back because they realized only you could be the front. So can you see English from that perspective played a very important role? But in the Arab world, their social media, everything can be in Arabic.
It's true. It's just that when you were saying that, look, the public opinion towards India and Pakistan is changing because the elite are speaking English language. English is the language for, I guess, top universities in Pakistan and all of this, and I'm sure that they're pushing English so much. So I was wondering, imagine now mass communication has originally been in English, the effect that might have had on us and still does.
So the only advantage we've got, if you take population of Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the Muslim population in India, that's half the world's population. And that's
true.
And they're not English and they're not white. So because we're a larger population, we can develop our own tech in our own languages. The problem is that the problem we've got at the moment, we're larger in number, but they invent the technology. So they invent how it works, the language, the software. Now you've got China, they're inventing it in their own language. So now you always see recruitment to go and learn Chinese. So this is the thing, isn't it? When you want to colonize the people, you have to give them your language. So now you can't do anything. So that's why in the subcontinent, to be like upper class or be educated, you need to know English. You have to have an appreciation for English. This exam and the education system is still modeled on what the British gave them. In the Arab world, in the Gulf states, the education system is modeled on the British. Even though as Muslims, we have a long history of education. We have a long history, deep history.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sheikh, the amount of literature that's there in Urdu and of course, Arabic and Persian, for instance, now it's literally rotting in the libraries, right? I mean, when I look in the last, let's say 2-3 years, I've been really concentrating on 2 languages, Arabic and Urdu. And I've realized like my own way of looking at things, more appreciation, of course, of the languages, but also the way things were put together, right? I mean, that's still because I have access to both languages. I can see I can appreciate like how it affects me, my personality, my mind. And when I, let's say, go back to the Muslim lands and you see what I'm saying? I mean, if I'm reading books in these languages, I kind of know how to deal with the people. So Sheikh, I mean, as long as we're still talking about, communication here, can one say that because the elite of our countries, studied English, continue to study English, the language of the elite is English today still. Did that affect how they looked at the masses? Did that disconnect them from the people that they were ruling? In how they, how they looked at the people?
So it has an impact, but I don't think it's the whole story, because when you have to rule over people, you have to give them a narrative. You have to look at what issues affect them. So knowing the language is important from that perspective. However, just because you can speak English and you're good with the Western media doesn't mean you're going to get support from your own people. You still have to be able to talk to your people in their own language and what the issues are. So, our rule has been disconnected with many other things, because look, many of these elites came to believe...
because even our own people are disconnected with our own history because of that.
Yeah. So this is a result of decline. When you decline, you don't know where you came from. You don't know your identity. You're being told the future is we need to become more like the West. So why would you study your history? You'd be studying their history. So why is it, for example, everyone knows about the Holocaust, but why is it nobody knows about the Bosnian genocide, which was a Holocaust,
or the Algerian genocide
in the 1990s? Or even more in history. I mean, I'll give you an example. 30 million Russians died in World War II. 30 million. 60 million people died in total. Half of them were Russians. Nobody knows that, but 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. Because that's their narrative. They teach that in schools in Europe. It's the history of Europe, and the history of Europe being promoted as the history of the world. So this is something the Chinese don't like, which is the rise of Europe in the last 500 years. So they're like, what's been happening for the last 20 centuries? Well, they go, the last 20 centuries, we ruled the world. We were the most powerful. But the world begins in 1500 with the rise of Europe. Before that, it was the Dark Ages. That's their narrative. And they keep teaching that. So
that's true. That's unbelievable, actually. That's true. I mean, that's how the world thinks. Oh, there's Dark Ages. I mean, the Muslim world existed. There was no Dark Ages there.
So when they come to our countries, what they say, you got to study Europe from 1500, the rise of Europe, and then you have to mimic that. So they say we had a Reformation.
See, I mean, look, Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
You see how it is. I mean, it's all English terminology.
Yep.
And it's all and affects how we think. Oh, let's look at the Enlightenment, and so that's what I'm saying, Sheikh. I mean, has this with so much modernization happened in English, I mean, has this really made us the way we are today? I mean, how we look at the understanding of pain with other Muslims suffering. I mean, because, I'm thinking like, when I'm looking at Gaza, I mean, really the response of the Muslim Ummah has been shameless, to be beyond. Do you think, is that also because of the effects of language, and that language has affected our culture, and then meaning how we think, and then how we've
No, I don't think it's language. I
internalized?
think what you've got here is you've got a series of issues, and the Ummah doesn't know how to bring it together and deal with it and even look at it productively. So I'll give you an example. You've got a genocide taking place. This is...
I mean, okay, even the word term genocide, for God's sakes.
Yeah. So
it's murder.
Yeah. So you've got people being killed en masse. You got rulers in the region who are doing nothing. And the West are indifferent, right? And, how do we deal with this? How do we bring it together? And it's been going on for 70 years or so. So this might sound simple to us, but for a lot of people, these things are disconnected. How do you bring it together? Now, what was interesting, what happened with India, Pakistan, there was only one solution. There was no confusion, no charity. There wasn't even, let's make dua after Jummah. It was, we have a military, why have they not gone yet? Very clear, right? So what you've got here is, but I would still say, despite the problems we have, the West has got a bigger problem. Israel's credibility is rock bottom. Support for Israel is rock bottom. Remember, we lost Palestine for 88 years in the 1300s.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah? We're 75 years, so we're warming up. It's happened before. And, Israel might be winning on the battlefield, but they're not confident about the future. They're not saying, now we've achieved something. Now they're not saying we've got all our security. They're saying we have to go and attack Hamas again. They're still there. In fact, Israeli society is divided over their future. So we've got our problems, absolutely. But 2 billion Muslims, same Aqidah, one Ummah, one Prophet, one Quran. Look, they're going to unite eventually because we've got too many beliefs which are the same. They are divided. Look at what America just said to the Europeans. You're on your own. You do your own security. The Europeans are now thinking, oh, we thought we were one people. We were one civilization. Not anymore. So the future is they're divided. What does the future of Israel mean? They have always said in their think tanks is that if the Muslims unite, the borders are gone, the rulers are gone, they've got resources, they've got capital resources, they've got large demographics. They know if these obstacles are removed, you've got a massive problem. This will be the civilization that dominates the world.
Last question here. You look at what's happening. I mean, it's taking the Ummah, let's say 75 some years for getting rid of, this occupation. Sheikh, do you think that it will, when it comes to getting rid of, Saudi Arabia, these cartoonic states that we have here, with that, it will take the same amount of resources and death and destruction, do you think, in order to, once there is...
I don't think it will. These are fake nations, and the rulers...
But look, I understand that, of course, there's a foreign entity there, meaning there's foreigners there in Palestine. But you look at Emirat, there's an actual American base there. You see what I'm saying? I mean, can they not use these bases? Or because you're saying the populations are Muslims, it's not going to be the same?
No, look, America had bases in Iraq and Afghanistan. Did it help in the end? It didn't.
I mean, they're there for 20 years.
They were there, but they failed in the end, ultimately.
That's what I'm asking. You're looking at 20 years old.
Despite having bases there. Yeah. In the end, they had to negotiate with them. To be honest with you, Barack Obama accepted in 2009, we can't win in Afghanistan. He has accepted it, despite the bases they had, despite even collaboration with the Northern Alliance. Yeah. So, look, these bases need electricity. Where did the electricity come from? They're not running off their own batteries, are they? They need electricity. Yeah. Secondly, what do you do when there's a base of 2,000, 5,000 people, but then you've got a population of 20 million? Basically, their presence is because our rulers allow it and our rulers facilitate it. Take that away, it's over. The rulers are more worried about their own people than they are even about America.
And that's what the US is saying. I guess we protect you from your own people.
If you watch his podcast, he interviewed Steve Witkoff. And Steve Witkoff said, he said, I am worried about Jordan and Egypt. And Tucker Carlson was shocked. These are our best allies. And he said, yeah, but the allies and the people, they're not on the same page. Even he recognizes that if the relationship between the rulers and the ruled becomes distant, they'll get overthrown. So America relies upon America's supply line into our countries is the rulers. They have bases, but the rulers allow it. They have bases, but the rulers give them electricity. They have bases, but the rulers give them fuel. You remove the rulers, massive problem. Then the argument is they've got their military. Yeah, they had their military, and how has it performed for the last 2 decades? Hasn't performed very well. And at the end of the day, I would say America's got more it's got more issues now. You've got a rising China, you've got Russia. They've got too many issues. How many issues are you going to deal with? The America of today is not the America of 2000, where unipolar power, no competition. Today there is a competition. Secondly, look, people have seen through America. America has no credibility around the world. It doesn't believe in its values. It's trampled over them. And Trump is just now saying it openly, which is forget values. America first. So if it's America first, why not the Ummah first? Why don't the people of Saudi think about themselves, not America? So, and now, this is the world we're in. So removing these rules, they're artificial, and the images, the information war is they're too strong, these rulers. That's how they make it out to be. And you have to, because you know how weak you are. But look, the West keeps saying that they've always been worried about Pakistan. They've been worried about Afghanistan. They're worried about Jordan. Even though Jordan's a 100-year-old country, why are they worried? Because they know the ruler is not representative of the people. So that can be turned upside down. Why do they worry about the Pakistan army? Because one soldier could turn the whole of Pakistan upside down. That's all it takes. So this is an image that the West is too strong, the rulers are too strong, and it's the rulers who promote the Ummahs too weak. You get an education. You develop yourself, perfect yourself, make dua. Give charity. This is how you bet yourself. Right? But we saw with this war with India, no one said the war happened because we're bad. Nobody said what happened was because we're bad people, we're being punished. Nobody said that. Everyone said they attacked us and we have to teach them. Can you see? This is by design. When in Palestine we say perfect yourself, we're bad, this is what the rulers and their scholars promote. So you don't do anything.
Yeah, no, that's true. Nobody was asking that we should be giving charity to Pakistan, and next thing you know, we should be rebuilding the masajid that were destroyed by India, or let's give money to the people of Bahawalpur and all this. Everybody was saying,
in fact, what's happened now, everyone is saying we have the ability to stand up against other powers because Pakistan has done it.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I've always we've discussed
Arab
this
media
before.
is all over Pakistan right now.
We've discussed this before. We've always said this. We've got the military capability. We've got the resources. Our rulers don't use our advantages. That's the problem. Look, Trump. Why did he not go to Europe to raise money? Why did Trump not go to American banks to raise money? Why did he go to the Arab board? If he went to the Arab board, what did the Arab board demand? They didn't even say, "We'll give you money. Stop giving arms to Israel." They didn't even say that. So they're in the position of strength, but they don't even realize it and they don't even take advantage of it. If I wrote you a 600 billion check, I want you to literally go to Israel and, tell the government what they should be doing and end the war now. And I'll give you 600 billion now. That's the position they're in. They could have just stopped oil for a day and the whole world economy would have crashed. So it's like they've got this power, but America's told them, oh, if you want to sit on your throne, then you need to help us. So they don't. This is how declined these tribal leaders are. They're in a position of strength, but they are working as though they're in the position of weakness. Whilst America's in the weaker position, acting arrogant that they're in the stronger position, which is what the mafia boss does, isn't it? He comes to collect his racket money until somebody rises against him, or someone who's a bit more just rise up against him, and he doesn't know what to do now. And remember, most rackets, they're Ponzi schemes. Once people can see that it's not what it is, it will fall apart. And we're seeing that with the American empire now.
Subhanallah, Sheikh. I mean, this is, you think it's not this hard to convince the people to see the reality the way it is. And that's what, I mean, I guess that's the conversation I'm trying to, like with the amount of information that's there on social media, and then still we haven't been able to really move the ummah. I mean, the Muslims, I'm talking in general, I mean, I guess final thought on this. Why is that, Sheikh? The Muslims are not seeing, I guess they're still stuck on their compartmentalized. I mean, what's happening, Sheikh? I mean, we're institutionalized, with the amount of social media and the amount of information that's out there, what we're seeing on the daily basis, you find 9 Muslims are moving, but the Muslims are, it's just that they don't have the means to do something, or they're just saying we don't know what to do at the end. Is that, why are we in this?
So what happens is, because we lost our understanding of Islam, we declined. And then 1924, what remained of Islam disappeared from Turkey. So when you're declined, you're unable to even join things together. You're unable to understand things for what they are. You think the weak are powerful, and you think the powerful are weak. And that's what's been going on. That's why there are 6 or 7 million Zionists in Israel. We are 500 million Muslims in the Middle East. Even the Zionists know the odds are against them. Even they recognize that. But the Muslims haven't recognized that. They still say, let's do charity.
That's what I'm saying, Sheikh. I mean,
see, it's a
mental illness?
Issue.
That's what I'm saying, Sheikh. It's mental illness.
This is decline. This is what decline is in thinking. Decline is you don't see the reality for what it is, because you don't have the concept, you don't have the framework. So what you do is, there's an opportunity, you don't see it as an opportunity. You think you're weak, the problem is you, when actually you're being oppressed. So Malcolm X used to talk about this, that the slaves were bigger in number than the slave owner, but they used to believe we're weak, we can't do anything. He's 1 or 2 people in a field, and you've got like 20 black slaves working. They could have rebelled, but can you see, intellectually they've been colonized, intellectually they've been destroyed. And that's what's happened to us. When you're intellectually destroyed, that's when you get these funny ideas that we're too weak, we're this, we're that. What Trump's Middle East visit shows you is where the money is. What it shows you is where the power is. That's what it shows you. Who else in the world, even America can't write a 600 billion check. Even America can't do that. So these leaders who can't give 1 dinar for Gaza found over 2 trillion for America. Yeah. That shows you these leaders are the problem. It shows you we're not weak. Where was Turkey? Where's Turkey been when it comes to Turkey can move for Syria, but it can't move for Gaza.
Yeah.
So really, what's happened is there's nothing wrong with the ummah, as in the ummah's not insincere. What we've got is one layer, which is the leaders, and the ummah just needs to realize that we've got the resources, we've got the capabilities, we've got the numbers. Yeah. In fact, who are the West most worried about?
Look, Sheikh, I know I keep saying the last question, but just because what you just said, people did realize, and there was an Arab Spring. I mean, you think that kind of made the Muslims saying, okay, what did the Arab Spring do?
Look, some people
I'm just saying.
That, look, I think you've got to remember that, look, we have to view the Arab Spring, as, before the earthquake, you get the tremor. The Arab Spring was the tremor. The earthquake's yet to come yet. And what that tremor did is, we can rise up against the ruler. We can organize and come out, right? And they learned that, look, you removed one man from the military, but the military was still in power. So they need to learn, you need to uproot the whole system. It's not about faces, right? So that's why Sisi is even more brutal with the people today, because he knows the people have risen up once and the people realize that. right? Look, when change comes, everybody will say, oh, it's inevitable. People hated the rulers hated the people hated the rulers. It might look difficult now. When it happens, that's why when the Arab Spring happened, what did everyone in the West say? Yeah, it was inevitable. The rulers are useless, the rulers hate the people, the rulers have failed the people. So people could see this was always going to happen. Although at the time people were like, oh, Mubarak's too strong, Ben Ali's too strong, Gaddafi's too strong. So people need to take the right lessons from these issues. Unfortunately, when you're declined, people sometimes don't even take the right lessons. Look, if every revolutionary said, because my revolution might fail, I'm going to do nothing, we'd have no revolutions.
True. Yeah, that's true. There will be no change period.
If Muhammad al-Jinnah said, forget it, we can't get Pakistan, Pakistan wouldn't exist today. Like every revolution starts with a vision, starts with heart, and then some will fail, some will succeed. Just because you failed, it doesn't now mean, forget that, let's give up. Yeah. But what's interesting is the West don't see it as the Muslims failed. What they see is the Muslims rose up against their rulers, which was impossible before. So they've made one move where they feel. So remember, the West has to succeed every time. We just have to succeed once, and the whole thing changes. So who's the competition?
That's true. I mean, there is.
Remember, if we get it right once, the whole global system changes. The West have to make sure we fail every time.
Right. I mean, more and more resources being used against. It's true.
And remember, Allah's promised the victory. Allah's told us this will happen. So we know we're going to succeed. So remember, the lesson people took from the hadith that Constantinople will fall isn't it's too difficult. Isn't, oh my God, what was the Prophet saying? What was the lesson people took? I want to be the blessed general. That's the lesson they took. And they tried again and again and again. When Constantinople fell, it didn't fall the first time. It fell after the 100th time.
That's true.
After 100 years of trying. So the thing here is we're going to look at it like that because the West are worried that the Muslims even broke the chains against the rulers. They're worried even about that. Because remember, who created the Middle East? Who created these countries? Who created the monarchy? It was the West. So they're not thinking this was close, but at least we won. They're thinking next time the Muslims might go further. So this is so funny. The West actually are viewing the Muslim world correctly. That the Muslims are getting closer. The Ummah isn't viewing it correctly. They're viewing, we failed, what's the point? So because they've got a civilization, they look at it much more critically and with the right concepts and framework. The Ummah doesn't. The Ummah just thinks we failed once, why do it again? Well, if that was the case, we'd have nothing today.
Subhanallah, Sheikh. Khair, inshallah. No, I think, this is, these are necessary conversations, Sheikh. I think, these type of conversations are rare. And then we are being open, blunt. We're saying to the world, we understand what the role of this Ummah is. It's being, people are making fun of the Middle East, calling it geopolitical ATM. Literally, somebody just goes there. It's like you put in the card, you don't even have to pay the fee, bro. It's unbelievable. I think people are seeing it and people are realizing it. And I think the shameless rulers, they have no shame with what's happening. And, inshallah, obviously we are having these conversations because of the frustrations that we are seeing, that we have all it takes, and yet we are in this position. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for the Ummah and show us the victories that we need to see, Sheikh. But the condition is in tansurullah yansurukum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum. Jazakallah khair, brother Adnan. Inshallah, we'll see you next time. Barakallah fiqh, akhi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.